Well, hello. It is now 1 o'clock Eastern Time, and it is time to get started. And welcome to Transform Tuesday. My name is Dave McCormick. I'm VP of Product Management here at Alpha Software, and I'm very pleased today to present our CTO, Dan Bricklin, who will be going over the permissions area of Transform. So if you have any questions about today, go ahead and type those questions into the questions box of the GoToWebinar control panel, and we will try to get to them during the session. So first I'm going to take Dan off mute here. Hello, Dan, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Oh, excellent. So I'm looking forward. Let me go ahead and make you the presenter again. And I'll let you know when we can see your screen.
Let's see, monitor, we want monitor, this one, that calls it monitor 2, okay.
All right.
Okay, what's clean mean? I'm in clean. Does that look good?
It looks good to me. Yep.
Okay.
And there we are in the permissions tab. Super.
Yep. So
I know that the permissions tab has caused a lot of confusion. I've explained it as saying that you can create different roles and different groups within those roles, and those can be used within Transform. They can be set within by the buttons. They could be used in the back end. But I was just hoping you could sort of just take us on a little tour of what the statuses and roles are, and sort of how, and that sort of that middle area too, the combined group, status, roles, permission list, sort of how that all works would be really helpful, and where we could find them.
Yeah. So let me go over the different parts. I mean, the whole idea of statuses, roles, this whole thing with permissions is to control who has access to what, who can see which application, who can see which data, who can modify the data, etc. So for example, you have to have a role of form designer, and here we're looking at the permissions tab, and on the permissions tab you see the I believe these are the default roles that you get, and statuses and the combined that you get when you get a new account. And you'll see that they're predefined 3 statuses. We'll get to that in a minute. And we have 5 roles. One of the roles is that you can just be a regular plain old user. You can be an admin. In order to be able to do certain things in the control panel in Transform Central, you need to be able to have admin account. You have to be an admin, an account administrator, which is, it has a name. Now notice each of these have a readable name and a short name. If you click on it, you'll see it's called, this is the role ID, and this is the display, which is account administrator. And each of the roles has a unique name that's used by the system and a display name. And optionally, you can add a description so that when it's listed in various lists, you can know what it means. The display names don't have to be unique. Sometimes you have more than one type of form designer or more than one type of administrator. Admin is different than account administrator. Account administrator is what you have to be able to do certain things to your account. Form designer lets you be able to have access to the designer tab. And user is usually used to be able to get to the filler. And a user usually doesn't have access to the management console, for example. So let's get into that. And let's do this. Let me explain statuses just a little bit. If you remember, when you have a, let's get some forms here. When you have a form, here's a simple form. And this form has a status of open. It's listed as its status. Every form, every instance of a form, so this is a particular type of form, which is the pump jack inspection, and the status of this form, this particular instance of it, which has all this data, is open. So if we go back to the permissions, we see that the statuses are open, submitted, and closed. So the model here for a simple case is to say that when you first have a form and it's being filled out, it's open. after you're finished filling it out, you would like to change it to submitted and change certain things about it. For example, in a management console, you may want to find which ones are submitted and do something about just the ones that are submitted. Closed, same thing. After it's been submitted and you're done with it, you may still want to keep it around and consider it to be closed before you might delete it. So we have our roles. Different users have different roles. Different forms have different statuses. And we have the combined group status role permissions list. What this says is that there is a group of these permissions. The specific permission says the roles allowed to create new form instances. Who can create a new form instance? If the form is a simple group, okay? So if you look at the designer and I look at a particular form, and we look at pump jack, and we look at it, we see that it has a status role permissions group. It's not set, but it could be set to either of the ones that have been defined, the simple group or the complex group. The default is the first one, which is the simple group. So if you don't specify one, it automatically goes to the simple group. So you see here that it says that who can create new form instances if the form was defined, the form type is defined in the designer as being in the simple group. It says, well, if it's a simple group form, then user, administrator, account administrator, all of these, there's a, can you see the check boxes over here? All of these are able to, these people with those roles are able to create new forms. Form designer isn't. Just because you can design the form doesn't mean you can actually fill out that form and create a blank one to be able to fill out. Who is allowed to look at it in the management console? In this case, administrators, account administrators, and management people who have management console as a role are allowed to look at it. But notice user can't log in and use the management console to be able to look at this type of form. So it would not show up in the list of types of forms that could be looked at. So this gives you control of who can create new ones, who's allowed to be able to list them in the management console. Then we say, well, if a particular form, instance of a form, is open, what can I do? Well, if I am a user, if my role is user, then I am allowed to list it on the form, in the form filler. I can see it in the list, I can edit it, and I can delete it. And what can I change it to? I can change it to either submitted or closed. And I can't do anything in the management console. I'm not allowed to list it, to edit it, or delete it because I'm just a user. Now, when you decide what a particular user logged in can do, it looks at all of the roles that person has and takes the most permissive of adding them all together. So if I'm an administrator, then in the form filler, I can't do anything in the form filler. But in the management console, I can list it, edit it, and delete it. And I can change it to submitted or closed. Okay, is what I'm allowed to do in the what's it called, in the management console. Account administrator can do everything in the management console. The form designer, not allowed to do anything. Management console, if you get management console, you're allowed to list, edit, and delete, and you can change it to all the statuses. And here in submitted, it says that if the form has changed to submitted, then the new statuses that you can do is you can change it. The user can change it back to open, so you can reopen it. The user is allowed to in the form filler. The administrator is allowed to change it from submitted to open and from submitted to closed, but notice the user is not able to, etc. So it gets complex, but as you see, there's a lot of power here to be able to say, what status, is the status of the form. You can have any number of statuses. You can have submitted and sent for authorization number 1, sent for authorization number 2. Only people who are set as being able to having a role that can do authorization number 1 or number 2. We are allowed to edit for doing certain things, etc. So like complex group, in the complex group, only an administrator can create new form instance. Nobody can browse right now on this. This has very little that it's able to do. But notice that the user is not allowed to, if it's submitted, the user doesn't even get to see it. Once it's submitted, the user will not be able to see it in their list of forms. Now, when you're in the filler and you change from one status to another, the filler remembers what the status was when you originally came in. And when you originally came in, if it was open when you originally came in, and then you say change it to submitted, it won't hide it until, and you can still change it back to open if you want. It won't hide it until it actually uploads it back to the server. At that point, then the next time you try to download it, it'll disappear. You won't be able to see it. So editing this is pretty simple. You just make changes. When you make changes, they're undo, redo over on the side. That allows you to make, for simple changes, some major deletions that you might do, deleting status, certain statuses and stuff, may not undo as well. But generally, if you make, like if I hit here, then I can get to, if I could only see the thing over here, can I move this over? Here we go. I can undo it and notice that this thing goes back from redo, for undo for what the value is. You see it being changed. So you have that. Now, there are a few other things you can do here. Go to help. And help allows you to be able to look at a lot of what I've just been telling you is all in the help. There's permissions. This help, you can look at information about the status. There's status list. There's this. I can go back up to the table of contents, etc. So whatever I told you, you can find it here. There's one other thing that's here, saving and loading. When you have all of these permissions, you may want to be able to save it to get back to the same thing later on, or to copy it from one account to another. All of the everything, all the changes you make do not take effect until you actually save it back up. So if I go here, and now that I've made a change, it says changes have not been uploaded. Click here to save the changes. You do that, and it's now sent back the server, and now we'll change the way your account works. As soon as a person logs out and logs back in again, they will get the new changes to permissions. Permissions are not instantly changed at this point on the client. On the server, for certain things that you want to do, like through the API and all, they do take effect right away. But the other thing about saving and loading is you can see the raw JSON, which means that this is all of the data that was represented by what you see here. If I can edit this if I want to. I don't recommend that you do, unless you really, really know what you're doing. We have no documentation on that. Or you can click in there, Control A, I've selected the whole thing. I can copy it out, and then I could paste it back in under a different account. If I'm on a different account, push update, which will take this and apply it back here, and then save it. And that's a way to be able to change, to copy it from one account to another. If you have, for example, a test account where you want to play around with this and get it working, and then you want to try it on another account, you'll be able to do it that way. So that's a long overview, wordy overview. Dave, any questions?
Just a quick question here, which was someone who said that their Transform account only has four statuses: open, submitted, approval, and I'm sorry, their account has four statuses: open, submit, approval, and close, and they have different roles.
Right.
Is it possible that your
Yeah,
account
that
is?
may have been. This is an old account, and
Okay.
I'm not sure what we've added for the defaults. We
Uh-huh.
keep updating what the defaults are. The
Yeah.
reason for approval is that I believe that we have a better version. There may be a better version of the complex group
Yeah.
that actually has approval. And there were some examples of using approval where you submitted it and then you could change it to needs approval,
Gotcha.
etc.
Right. So, because you may have a workflow that requires one person to sign off, and then it needs to go to another person for sign off afterwards, that kind of thing.
Right.
You
So
prefer it.
this was designed as a very basic way of being able to give you some workflow
Uh-huh.
by controlling who sees which
Right.
forms and who's allowed to do certain things, so that you can at least make things read only. You'll notice sometimes when you press submit that the form gets a little lock on the tab, which
Right.
says
Yep.
that it's now read only,
Yep.
and that's because this says that if you're a user and submitted, um, it would say that you're not allowed to in that particular one. It would have edit turned off.
I got it. So, if I can summarize actually, just let me summarize and then tell me if I'm sort of wrong here. But when it comes time to setting up permissions, there's actually three different areas that you may go. One is on the home page to assign users to certain roles. They can be in your account. It looks like they've got 5 choices, but you can add and remove those
Yes,
choices. So why don't we go ahead and do that?
right.
Wait for it to show up,
So here I have all of these, and here I am able to
and there are
be
your
able to.
5, right? So that's how you set them. For the for the on the form designer itself, if we go into form designer, by default, the status is the first status that appears here on this list, and a default account is always going to have simple as the first one. But you could create other ones, in which case you would choose them here in that box.
Right. In fact, for a lot of things where you have to specify a status or a role,
Right.
or it takes, if one is not defined, it takes if you haven't specified, it takes the first one as default. So the order matters, but
Yeah.
I can change the order by pushing move down,
Right.
move up. So you can change the order, clicking on it to make it show up and go away.
Cool.
Okay. Yep.
So we have a question here from David, who's just asking, when will the new transform interface be released? I was just sort of wondering a sort of a clarification, because what you have here hopefully is what you're seeing on your screen when you log in as well.
Okay, so there are a few things that you should all
Yeah.
know. First
Okay.
of all, that we've been updating the look of TransForm. So it has this new darker blue look, and tabs that look like this compared to what it was before. This
Right.
occurred to the Transform Central.
Hmm.
The Transform filler was updated in the app stores, was it last week?
That's right.
And that's real important to know. It's a different thing to know about, which is that there's a new version of the version 2.1 is the one that's out there. And version 2.1 has some new things. And just to show you from here, if I look at, say, if I create a new form, let's add, we'll add a blank form, right? And QuickStart. So QuickStart, first of all, now has this look here, which is much nicer.
Mhm.
And you'll notice that in addition to the text number, signed, integer, there's now currency. Currency has a little different keyboard and it forces things to 2 decimal places. If you happen to be using a currency that's only in integers, use integer, or use just a plain number where you won't get the forced 2 decimal places. Currency gives you a keyboard that if you type 1, 2, 3, 4, you'll end up with 12.34
Mhm.
as the value, and there's a double zero. In addition, we've added date now, which is that basically gives you a button. Then when you push it, it sets the field to the current time in seconds. There's a stopwatch field, which you can learn about. The photos now can be edited, ink can be drawn on top of the photos. We have access to a scanner, which will give you whatever the barcode or QR code gives you. That value will be put in the field. And so those have been added to the builder,
Right.
and are available in the filler if you get the new version of the
You
filler.
need to get the new version, right?
Yes,
And
you can
for
find
those
these
of you
here.
who know how to find that, if you go and you look for Alpha Transform in the store, you'll find it. If you've already installed the application, it should just be listed as an update. It should be able to just update the one that you already have.
Yes, it's not part of the automatic update. Now, there are some updates we can, at Alpha, we can make them available, and they will be automatically updated the next time that you run the filler. This was not one of those. This, because we added major things, including the scanner, which required adding some new plugins. We had to actually change
the auto update feature itself. I don't know if that was the.
Yeah, we improved the auto update feature also. Exactly. It now tells you that there's a new version and stuff like that. So.
And what's new and things in it too as well, which is cool. Yeah.
Oh yes, you should know that if you a thing that you might want to do is, let's go back over here. If I go to the filler and go to help, and let's do this. In the help, one of the things that's there is versions. You click on it, and you'll get a list of what's been changed in each of the versions. So that you probably were running 1.1 or 1.20, now 1.30, and then now we have 2.1 is out, and at some point we'll have 2.11 maybe, etc. We're planning eventually to have a version 3, etc., to have more. We're really working hard to add more features constantly to TransForm.
So the more you use TransForm and report back, the more your features will be the ones that'll be included. We're still looking for people who want to build out use cases and share their forms and things like that. So if you have something that you would like to share or be willing to share with us, a form that you've built, if you could send an email to tfservice@alphasoftware.com, we'd really like to take a look at that. Great. Do we have any other questions? Okay. So actually, there's someone who's come across a little bug.
Okay.
It has to do with the visiting.
We love bug reports.
Yeah. We do like bug reports, and I think I've seen this one before as well. And can I ask the person who submitted this one about their JS error message about whether or not they happen to be using a Mac and they happen to be using Safari when they get that particular error? Because that I think there might be a weirdness in Transform Central, which I'll report back to you. Are there any other questions about this?
Some issue that if you have a tab that's been open with Transform Central, and you come back to it a long time later, especially when the login is expired, and you start running again, sometimes there are errors. And the thing to do is close down the tab and just open a new tab and bring up Transform Central.
Great. Oh, excellent. Okay.
We will get that fixed at some point soon.
Yep. Sounds good. Okay, great. And I got another feedback from this person, so we had something else to look at. Here's a question right here. Would you mind just in the few minutes that we have left, just sort of walk us through how to isolate a form so that only a specific user could use that one form? I guess that sort of touches on all the areas here.
So basically create a group. So you do a plus over here to add a new group.
Okay.
And have a new role. You need a new role, and just say that only let's say only administrators, or maybe only that particular user has access to, and just say what they're allowed to do. That's it. And set everything up along those lines. And then only that person will be able to see it in the management console. Only that person will be able to see it on the filler, etc.
So create a
But
new,
you have to do it by role.
create a new role
You have to have a
and
role and assign that
call it
role to the
something.
user.
If that person is, let's say he's your dispatch officer, let's just give it a
Right.
weird name. You'd create a role called dispatch officer. Or if you want to be really specific, you want to call a name called James, because you only have one James working at your company, and James gets access to certain forms. It's James. So you would create that role. You would then create that group, but you would define that group in such a way that only James has access to that group, or only
That's right.
dispatch, or whatever the role is.
That's right.
Then you would go into Designer, right? If we can go ahead and
Yeah.
maybe click that tab, and then you'd go down to where it says Advanced Features, and you would set the status role to that new role
James
that you
group.
just
Yeah.
created, right?
The James group. Right.
And then last but certainly not least is you'd go to the Home tab, you'd
Make sure
find
that
that
James is in
particular
that role.
user, and make sure
Add
that you've
that.
assigned him to that role. Exactly.
Control click to get it, to add it to the list.
Yeah, exactly. So
Is that clear?
yep, that would do the trick. Hopefully that's clear. Oh, yep, they said perfect. So that's a good answer. Wonderful.
Yeah, now, this is an area that has not been heavily used yet. So
No.
if it's not behaving the way you expect, just very carefully look at what's happening here, but then let us know.
Yeah, by all means, anything that seems weird or you just simply don't understand, tfservice@alphasoftware.com. There's a team of at least 3 of us who monitor that email, and we'll get back to you with an answer.
And then we'll send it off to the rest of the team as needed.
And we'll get it to the right team to fix it, of
Right.
course.
Now,
Yeah.
you can also, as a programmer, one can use the API to be able to do other things in terms of moving it from place to place. For example, one thing you often want to do is you want to change who is the user. If we go back here, this is the user. That means when I log in under Dan Bricklin, Bricklin.com, when I log in with the filler, I get to see it. It's assigned to me. But if I put somebody else's name, somebody else's here, then when that person logs into the filler, they will see it in their list. So you can change who it goes to
and you can
based on that.
Do that using the API.
Not just and you can do that either manually here or through the API, and you don't have to worry about roles, because basically, except in the management console, because anybody with access to the management console would theoretically be able to look at it. But if in terms of a particular user, will see that form. The other thing is that because remember that you can't see the form, because in the list of forms that you can create in the filler, you won't see forms that you're not allowed to create.
Right.
Okay. Now there may be forms that you're allowed to see but not create, so they won't show up in the list, but forms that are of that type will still show up in the list of forms that you have, that you can edit, but you just can't create a new one.
Gotcha. Yep.
I mean, there's all these different aspects of it. If you think about it, hopefully we've taken into account all the ones that you'll need.
Yeah. Excellent. That's it. Another person just asked, and I've heard this one more time before, was if the ability to do special date formatting might be on the roadmap, so that when people, especially in the form filler, are looking at, say, the date time value that's assigned either from the pick list or when you capture a signature, if that could be in. Right now, it's formatted as year, month, day, but if we can do
sortable. It's right now in text.
In sortable, the way that you would sort it.
Yeah. Sortable text.
Right.
It's not, though, displayed in
either
in
British or American format. Yeah, right, exactly.
Or whatever. And those, that format, over time, we're going to give you more and more capabilities to change how things are done in terms of doing that validation, stuff of that sort.
Excellent. That was the exact answer to the question. So wonderful. Thanks very much. So it looks like, interesting. Okay, so it looks like that's all the time we have. And Dan, I want to thank you very much for coming on and explaining permissions. I know I learned a lot. I know Sarah is there, and we had a bunch of people here. So if you do have any other questions, by all means, send them off to tfservice@alphasoftware.com, and we would be happy to take care of you. Thanks again for joining. Thanks a lot for asking questions. And we hope to see you next week at the next Transform Tuesday. Take care and have a great day. Bye-bye.